Hi, my name is Mrs. Paul, and we're going to talk about the different types of situations in which we're going to use commas today. We're going to do basic review. We're going to go over 3 different types of sentences that you will use commas most frequently. There are a lot more instances than when you use commas, but we're just going to talk about those today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. I'm going to present this. So while we're getting started, I would love for you to go into Kahoot and do this, put in this game pin. So we're going to practice a little bit today to check for your understanding. Okay, so kind of just this, we're just going back to the basics. We're going to talk about what a comma is and 3 different instances and what we'll use them. Phrases and clauses, independent clauses, and compound sentences. We're going to talk about those today. Hopefully it's just a review for you, but take notes if there's anything anything new that you're learning, and make sure to ask questions if you do have any. Okay, so what is a comma? It's a punctuation mark, but it indicates that a pause is needed in a sentence. It helps clarify meaning for the reader. So one of my favorite examples that I like to use is the phrase, let's eat grandpa. So let's eat grandpa. So if we have no comma there, that's like, okay, we're gonna eat grandpa for dinner. But that's not really the case, right? So if we have let's eat comma grandpa, that says, come on grandpa, let's go eat. So that's a really good instance where you would want to use a comma. Okay, so we're going to talk about the differences between a clause and a phrase, because you'll come across these words, and there is a difference between the two. So a clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a verb that complements each other. And then a phrase is a group of words that does not contain a subject or a verb. So an example of a phrase would be to the corner store. So if I just come up to you and say to the corner store, you're probably going to look at me like, what is she talking about? So you need to make sure that you have a subject and a verb within your sentence so it complements each other and it makes a complete sentence. So an independent clause. So one of the ways that I like to remember independent clause is just basically the word independent. So if you're independent from your parents, that means you don't need anything. You don't need help from them to get food, shelter, clothing, money, etc. That's kind of what an independent clause is. It doesn't need any help from anything else to be complete. It contains both a subject and a verb. And an independent clause can be as short as 3 words. So for example, the couple dances. So couple is the subject, verb, dances. Another example, the girl sang. Girl is the subject, and the verb is sang. So then we have another example here, compound sentences. And this is where we are going to use a comma for short. So a compound sentence contains 2 independent clauses and is joined by a coordinating conjunction, or a fanboy, as I like to remember it, the acronym. For and nor, but, or yet so. So examples of compound sentences. Bill bought the ingredients, so Leah baked the cake. So anytime you use one of these fanboys, joining 2 independent clauses together on either side of the comma, you have to use, the fanboy, you have to use a comma. So the comma in a compound sentence is placed before the coordinating conjunction. So here's an example. Bill bought the ingredients is our first independent clause. Leah baked the cake is our second independent clause. To combine that and make it a longer sentence, to make our writing flow better, we use a conjunction, in this case, so we place the comma before the conjunction. Another example down here, Andy built a snowman, comma, and Jeff played with his dog. So what are the independent clauses in these sentences? Perfect, good. So Andy built a snowman, Jeff played with his dog are the 2 independent clauses. We combine those together with a comma, and we put our fanboy, and it's kind of confusing. So we now have one sentence joined with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So what I'd like for you to do in your Kahoot is I would like for you to click on the word that the comma should be attached to. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to flip over to that screen. So go ahead and answer number 1 and we'll see how many of you get it correct. Perfect, good. Okay, so we want to put the comma before so. Okay, and number 2, the test was important, comma, and he fared miserably. So go ahead and click on the answer that you think for in your Kahoot. We'll do that one really quick and I'll give you a few seconds. All right, perfect. Looks like almost all of you got that right. So you want to make sure that you put comma and he failed miserably. So the test was important is our first independent clause. He failed miserably is our second independent clause. So we want to put the comma and. In these instances, you know, you could have these as 2 separate sentences. You could put a period after important and have two short sentences, but we kind of want to make our writing flow a little better. So these are ways to make our writing better. And then number 3, I'll go ahead and let you do that one. The girl did not go home, nor did he go to the game. So which word should the comma come before? Perfect, you got it all right, good. So comma nor is where it should go. Perfect, good. Okay, so we're gonna talk about introductory clauses and dependent clauses today, and then we'll go through the last 3 the next time we meet. Okay, so a dependent clause, so this kind of goes back to remembering independent clauses. So dependent, you guys are dependent upon your parents for food, clothing, housing, all of that stuff. So a dependent clause, it needs something else to make it a complete sentence. Okay, so some ways, some words to help you figure out if you have a dependent clause. Usually when you see these kinds of words, you got a dependent clause. So because, before, while, unless, once, as, and these are not, when we have these, they're not complete sentences. It cannot stand alone. So if I just come up to you and I say, I'm going to the store because, and I just leave it there, or because I went to the store, okay, it doesn't make sense, right? Okay, it needs help. It needs that independent clause. Okay, so dependent clause as phrases and clauses help clarify and add detail to an independent clause. They can appear at the beginning, the middle, or the end of a sentence. Okay, but the one thing I want you to remember is they cannot stand alone. Okay, so here's an example. When Mary called 911, comma, the firemen rushed to her rescue. So right here, we have an introductory clause and the dependent clause acts as that introductory clause. So when Mary called 911, okay, we don't have a complete sentence right there, all right? We have a subject and a verb, but we have that marker right here, when, so that is a pretty good indicator that we're not gonna have a complete sentence and it's gonna be a dependent clause, and we're gonna need some kind of punctuation, in this case, a comma. The firemen rushed to her rescue. There's our independent clause. It helps the dependent clause and it makes it a complete sentence. Okay, so here are some other examples. During the game, comma, the boy ate the pizza. So note that when dependent clauses come at the beginning of a sentence, you must use a comma before moving to the independent clause. So all of these are examples of introductory phrases, okay? So we have during the game, comma, the boy ate the pizza. During the game is our dependent clause. The boy ate the pizza is our independent clause. The boy ate the pizza can stand alone. During the game, cannot. And once again, we have our little marker here, during, our marker word that indicates that that's most likely a dependent clause. Another one, unless you take the quiz, that's a dependent clause, it can't stand alone, you are going to fail for the 9 weeks. Okay, so that's our independent clause. You are going to fail for the 9 weeks, can stand alone, but unless you take the quiz, cannot stand alone. And then once again, there's our little marker there, unless. Okay, perfect, good. All right, so let's go back to our Kahoot. And so I'm gonna have you click on the word that the comma should be attached to. So number 1, once we had arrived, we were greeted like royalty. So I'm gonna have you go ahead and do your Kahoot. All right, perfect, good. So the comma is going to come before we. Once we had arrived is our dependent clause. we were greeted like royalty is our dependent clause. Excuse me, independent clause. Perfect, good. Let's jump down to number 4. Okay, before he could speak, his mother was already scolding him. So which one should that one go to? Which word should we put our comma? Perfect, good. After speak or before his, you can kind of put it whichever way you want. Perfect. So before he could speak is our dependent clause. His mother was already scolding him is an independent clause. Therefore, we need that comma for that introductory phrase. All right, perfect, good. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to I'm going to have a Google Doc for you to practice identifying the different instances in when we use commas. And I would love for you to submit that for me. And I'll get it back to you within a few days. And make sure if you do have any questions as you're going through it, please, pop into my office hours, send me an email, give me a call, whatever you need. And I'll be glad to help you. And I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.